Good evening. Welcome to the first Inside Government show for the spring 2023 semester here at QU Community College and broadcast on Spectrum, Verizon Fios, the Auburn Regional Media Access, better known as ARMA, as well as Win 89.1, the college's radio station. I'm your host, Guy Cosentino. Our first guest, as usual, occurs with rare exception, is the mayor of the city of Auburn, Michael D. Quill. In November, he announced he would not be seeking a fifth four-year term and is now in his final year of his fourth four-year term as mayor. He was elected in 2007. We've asked him on to talk in the studio about projects the city is working on, but also talk about why he's decided not to seek re-election. The city has also been involved in amending its nuisance law and has decided to enforce a law on Osborne Street over some flowers and a right-of-way, and we'll also talk about the notices you all got at home about water treatment. Welcome back.
Thank you.
And congratulations on your decision.
I'm peaceful with it. I think it's the right thing to do at the right time to do it.
So why?
Why? It's always good for new blood to come in and take a different look at items or different things that we're working on. I worked with a great bunch of people from day one. It was terrific. We have a city manager, Mr. Digert. He's been terrific, and all the department heads and all the rank and file. I guess it's best to go out on if you're a major league ball player, you go out when you're winning and not when you're down in the dumps.
So what went into the decision?
It was just time. There was, I just thought about it off and on. Joan, my wife, and I had talked about it, and at the same time, Paul Lattimore Sr. served 16 years, and as I recall, he was defeated.
Yes, Mayor Loughran defeated him in 1983
for his fifth term. And I felt we had a good run. I enjoyed working with everyone, but it was time to go out when you're on.
But you weren't worried about an electoral defeat. You beat the same candidate 4 times in a row, who may or may not. Tim Lattimore may or may not run for mayor or city council. That wouldn't have been a factor for you, would it?
Well, it had a factor in, sure.
Okay.
But things. In my own mind, with Mr. Diger once again and the staff, things have come a long way. A lot of hard work, and go out when they remember you.
So one last question on the decision process itself: was it easy to get to that point?
Joan and I had been talking for a while. My wife Joan and I had been talked with our children and our daughter-in-law and our son-in-law, and it was just time. And the grandchildren are not getting any younger. And I want to spend some time with them. And
almost got one almost ready to drive. I know
very short.
My son's age is a 10-year-old or 11-year-old, and they're all.
His sister is 2 years or 3 years younger than he is.
So this is not like it's the end. And in fact, most of the news stories about your decision weren't political obituaries or the end of, but you have about 10 and a half months still left.
Correct.
So what's still on the agenda for you personally that you'd like to see get done?
I would just like to see a lot of things that we've wrapped up. I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit about the DRI, get some of that done. Water filtration is high in my priority list. I feel council and the management team. The overall condition of the housing stock in Auburn, things that are always there, but let's get a leg up and get a good start.
Is there anything in 15 plus years you said, I wish we could do this, and I'm just not going to be able to deal with this before the end of December?
It's like ice cream. It's the flavor of the month. You know yourself that something's always comes up. It's always in the background. But I'm proud of everything we've done. There's always something that we've missed or didn't do as much homework as folks feel we should. But that's always going to be there. You
have had, it's political luck or good fortune or whatever you want to call it. You've had a lot of money infused to Auburn in the last, let's say, 8 years.
Correct.
Between DRI, the tourism office, other things like that. Besides that, which is outside money, but it has been able to leverage into project. And I still want to have you back in the fall. Okay. So what do you think your legacy is at this stage?
Oh, that's way beyond my thoughts, or I just want to be remembered as a nice person who tried I don't look for anything more. I don't want to go out and everybody say, well, that's a fast mayor walking down the street. I'm still Mike Quill living on Lansing Street and always will be.
So Mike Quill is still going to live on Lansing Street, but I know you were on the Airport Authority Board,
Right.
and you've rotated off that. You're on a municipal insurance board for the state of New York.
Still there.
Will you still be participating in those, or when your term ends, those types of things?
By my own, by myself, I want to step away. I was always welcomed very graciously to any of these boards. Hopefully, I helped in some way. But it's always good for new blood to come in with different ideas.
Do you have any post-January plans?
No, not really. No,
How about genealogy?
Oh, I work on that every day. So
Yeah, so there won't be a change in that, just maybe a little bit more time.
I'm up to 33,000 people in my tree, so I enjoy it.
So I want to talk about a couple things. We are going to get to water and,
Sure.
and water treatment. I do want to talk about the other day, as we're taping here on Valentine's Day. Last week, Council amended your nuisance law. First of all, why did you do that?
No matter how much legislation you put together, you approve, there's always something that slips through the cracks, or not intentionally, but something has to be tackled.
So what was on the books but is not, that you added, what was on the books before that you needed to change?
Offhand, I can't answer that. I don't have the paperwork.
So,
Not that I'm not trying to avoid you.
but one of the differences now between, let's say, last Wednesday and today is something about licensing and enforcement. So what is that all about? That's what the bulk of Thursday was about, correct?
in regards to the smoke shops, and so.
But all businesses, making sure they're licensed.
Right. Throw that question at me again, if you would.
So now the nuisance law is, as I understood it from the Citizen article, is now the city is going to enforce to a greater degree that anyone who has to get a federal, state, or local license has to comply with those before they can operate their business.
Right.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay. So the interesting part about this whole story, I said all that to get to this. There's a business called I Am Stuck. I think that's its name. They're on the corner of Seminary in East Genesee.
Right.
It's been reported that they, quote, have a consulting and marketing firm, end quote, on their signage, but their website said they are, quote, a dispensary, end quote. What are they a dispensary of?
I believe they want to be a dispensary of marijuana being legalized. I believe that's part of what their goal is. That's.
So was the amendment that was passed last week aimed specifically at them?
No.
Okay.
No. Up in the area of the 5 Points, there's one or two.
There's a lot of them
going around, and just trying to make it an even playing field for everyone. The neighbors, rightfully so, complain about the late hours, the bright lights, different things.
Of all the smoke shops, or this one?
A good portion of them.
So, taking a step back,
okay.
Many of these smoke shops seem to be, and I think I was with you, but may have been some other interview in this studio. Many of these smoke shops are waiting for state licensing.
Correct.
And there are no licenses in Cuyahoga County, correct, at this stage, or at least in the city of Auburn.
Not in the city of Auburn. I believe, isn't there one really? I believe
right.
there
so,
is.
But they're waiting for licensing to be able to sell cannabis and marijuana.
Right.
Okay. So the I'm Stuck story, which is an interesting name in itself, has two different pieces. One was David Tully, who was the owner of the store. He was escorted out of city council chambers, correct?
Correct.
Why?
He let's back up. He wasn't forcibly. He was just escorted out. Just a couple comments that he made, and I felt it was aimed at council and myself. And we're not going to go down to that level. We try to be as from the one side of the bar. We try to be as professional as we can, but at the same time, I expect the same from our audience.
But it sounds like from the quotes in the Citizen, it could be interpreted that his comments were threatening.
That's what I called him on.
Okay.
Because at that point I did feel that he was trying to be.
So you think he was being threatening to council?
That's why I started a conversation with him.
So Was he charged with anything in the end?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I did not do a follow-up nor.
I can give you past lessons on how to do this if you'd like to.
Nah,
Done it once before.
I'll never. I've only got about 10 months. I'll never catch up with it.
So, what was more interesting to me was his offer to city council.
Yes. Yep.
And I don't know. And so he made an offer, and again, I'm going to quote. He made a pledge of $50,000 for, quote, the recreational facilities throughout, I think it's throughout the city in support of I'm Stuck. Was this before you voted on the nuisance law or after?
It was before.
Okay. So did you interpret that pledge as a pledge that you would get the money if you didn't vote for the nuisance law?
The money and in all honesty, did not enter into my mind. Okay. And I can't speak for our counselors, but it was not discussed afterwards. No one even mentioned.
Okay. So he pledged $50,000. Do you think the city will see it?
It would be nice under the right reason, for the right reasons.
And back to
at the same time, regardless who wants to contribute to our city for recreation, whatever, that's
and this was part of a larger discussion about the community development block. Right. You have to community development block grant, CDBG for short. Right. You have to have public hearings every year about how you distribute the money.
That's correct.
So anybody who wants to contribute to that, which is usually far and few between, usually foundations may, but normal taxpayers and businesses don't usually get involved in that. Correct.
Correct.
Do you expect what you passed on Thursday to be challenged in court? Is your Nate Garland, I think, was the legal counsel on this for the.
In this 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I'd say probably not. But in this day and age, it's
everybody's
a society. Yeah.
So I want to go back to this much larger issue that I think it's not the I am stuck issue, but it is maybe part of this bigger issue of licensing businesses in marijuana. This has become an issue for municipalities, yes, correct?
Correct.
So there are known, you need to have a license. There are no licenses in Auburn to sell cannabis and marijuana right now.
Correct.
When do you think, because I know I've talked to other members of council, the state of New York is very behind in this licensing process.
Right.
They rolled this out and they have missed pretty much
fumbled
every day. Yep. So yep. I think the closest one may even be Binghamton right now.
Could be.
There's a full scale. Do you see licensing as a concern for the city right now?
Well, let me throw this back. A lack of a license would be a problem. Is for these organizations, these storefronts, whatever the case may be, applying for it. I don't see where the city's going to be too impacted in regards to that.
So one of the criticisms of the city is that if the city didn't approve this, allowing these businesses to be in the city of Auburn, you wouldn't have this problem.
Right.
Do you agree with that contention?
No, I don't. I believe that if someone wants to operate a business and they follow all the rules and regulations, I certainly do not want to stand in their way. So I'm kind of answering that without answering.
So you don't think that the city should rethink the cannabis legislation? No, I don't think you can, but if you had the option.
A lot of it is governed by the state, and so we maybe be able to tweak this or that, the areas that may be sold or whatever, but there's not a whole lot. If the state says that they can be here, we're going to have.
But what I'm saying is the original reason the city agreed to allow this, and then you get tax revenues for it.
Right.
Some suggested that, well, it was just the city wanting money. Others have said if it doesn't occur here, it's going to help. It'll be an illegal.
Yep.
There's all different sides to all of this, but the city can't at this stage opt out.
That I don't believe so. No.
So the city set a specific deadline for that last year. So apparently this is the Flowers, Plants, and Things show, because I'm going to go from marijuana to sunflowers or wildflowers. Can you tell us what's occurring? I thought this was ending back in August, and you may have thought so too, but there's a patch of wildflowers on Osborne Street. I believe this is near O'Toole's Bar.
Correct.
Can you tell us what has occurred there?
I have to be careful how I say. There has been a lot going on, and I know Mr. Dygert, our city manager and corporation counsel, have been working with neighbors in that community. It's I don't think there's ever going to be a right answer to it. Keep in mind that the part of the area there is access to the river, city access to the river. It's also on a curve, which is
a blind spot.
It can be, yes.
So I think this is, again, just like the I'm stuck issue, it's multiple issues. Question originally came up, O'Toole's, which is a bar there,
Right.
has an agreement with the city for a patch of land across the street for parking.
Correct. And they lease it. I don't know, monthly, I believe it is.
So a neighbor there would like to have rights to that.
Right.
Mr. Udall, I think it is. But he has since been arrested for planting wildflowers.
Correct.
Why was he arrested for planting wildflowers?
Because it became a obstacle, so to speak, when you're driving at line of sight. I'm sure you've been on that curve many times yourself.
I do. Easy access from Wegmans, but I think it's horrible at night because it's dark, and during the day it's not much better.
And I look at it more coming the other way, coming from the bridge down.
Okay.
That's just the way but it's a concern about line of sight, as you say, more than anything.
So Mr. Udall was charged with a second-degree obstruction governmental administration because he tried to stop city employees from cutting down the wildflowers.
Right.
Correct? So he's rejected a deal with the courts, it sounds like, and he's going to go to trial next month.
Okay.
Okay. Do you know if the city has done this before? Not necessarily with Mr. Udall, but there's a right-of-way here, and I know you don't want political signs there or any advertising in between sidewalk and the curb, but has the city gone through and clear-cut things like this before?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Not my time that I and I could be proven wrong, but I don't recall it. There's a lot going on there too. That the parking area that's used for parking area is an access that we need to the outlet also, because that.
Well, I think if I remember, I read something a couple of weeks ago by David Wilcox. It's also got a historic piece there as a settlement
by the Freeman.
By the Freemans.
Yeah.
So it's a very complex issue to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely. It was cut and dry easy, but nothing is really easy.
So you said it right next to the outlet, so let's go to water.
Okay.
So city residents received a mailing within the last month from the city on issues regarding water distribution system. What was the city alerting everybody to?
That we need to do upgrades. We're still worried about water quality, the treatment of the water to maintain the quality. So there's many things going on.
I'm not going to try to pronounce the word of the item that was in there, but it basically there's a disinfection byproduct that is in higher concentrations than the EPA allows. Okay. So is this an emergency?
An emergency all depends on where you're sitting.
Okay.
It is.
But your director of municipal Seth
is right on top of it,
okay.
and he explained the best he could with myself and council where we're at, what we want to do, and how we have to get there. And there are many issues going on with it. So, but water is crucial to us all.
And so with this, you're looking at steps to fix it right now, and the hope is to fix it within 90 days.
Right.
On this issue, the city has also seems to be waiting, unless it's changed. And we should have said that was Seth Jensen we were talking about.
Correct.
Your director of municipal
Correct.
utilities. The city has been waiting for a plan to be approved for Wasco Lake.
Correct.
First of all, what's the plan?
Here's the deal: is what can
It's phosphorus and what's allowable in.
It's washing in from the hillsides and so forth. I'm going to be in trouble. Dairy farms and all its
You're leaving.
A byproduct.
You're leaving.
Yeah, but I don't want to dump this on what it's going to be. There's a whole lot more to it, and we've been trying.
Is this the 9 elements plan?
It deals with that part. Yeah.
So I know other members of council have been chomping at the state for not doing anything, or I shouldn't say not doing anything, not either approving or giving feedback on the plan.
Dragging their heels.
Okay, that's a better term. So where have you not gotten approval of this plan yet?
No, we have not. And Senator Helming, our new senator, is very in tune with this. And I know two of our council members, Councilor Cuddy and Councilor Genatino, are working very hard to work with her to accomplish.
So you mean
something.
Senator May?
Yeah.
So I think I read somewhere where she will be the first senator in a very long time that has the whole watershed in her district.
I believe
where
so.
you most likely have had Senator Seward or
little pieces here, pieces
Mike
there.
Mazzillo, or whoever. Everybody's had little pieces. Okay. That being said, you got some good news at the end of December. You're getting $3.7 million from the state of New York for the treatment plant, correct?
Correct.
So that's at the end of the system, or is that the water treatment plant?
That's at the
front end?
It's front end, I believe.
Okay. So what will that money be used for?
Upgrades. You know, if you go back, I think about, we talked briefly about my grandfather being city council member for years. This goes way, way back. All the old sand filters are still there, and
it is the most interesting place in the world.
It's fascinating.
It is.
It's fascinating.
So if you don't know what we're talking about, if you go up to the east end, I will not say where it is for obvious reasons, but below the surface, there are the areas where you run the water system through, and there are sand filters that take a lot of manual labor still to clear out every summer or it's in four quarters.
Just a natural.
It's a cavern.
Process.
It's just it is interesting. I'm sure the city would give tours, but you should charge for that.
It's a great place to go on a hot summer day. It's nice and cool.
It is. But with that being said, the city council approved back in 2021 $6.2 million for this project.
Right.
And so with this 3.7, you're getting about 60% of this covered by the state of New York. So has work started on any of this yet?
I still think we're still in the planning stages of preparing everything. You know, it's whatever you've been in government, whatever you plan for, something else pops up or this pops up, and you draw attention away from that. But I like to do something once and do it right, and it's almost impossible.
So the water and sewer is a big project.
Correct.
And I know you've been talking about it at council for some time. Really the last major upgrades where you had a complete overhaul, because this sounds like what council is talking about now is a complete overhaul.
Yes.
For the first time since the early 90s.
Yeah.
And that was a $63 million project. So is council looking at this larger issue?
Yes. We have to. We don't have to, but we have to.
You don't have to in the sense of in the 90s you were under consent orders.
Yeah,
right now
correct.
you're not under DEC.
That's
the
correct.
Department of Environmental Conservation isn't saying to you, you must.
Not yet. And I don't expect they will, but you never know.
Any idea how much? In the 1990s it was $63 million. What's it going to cost now?
Double that. It's hard to say, but we get these. When you get engineers, nothing against engineers, when they start drawing this out, mapping out, putting this all together, and then the requirements, and what is if you treat the water or sewage in this way, what is the downside of that, and how adaptable are you? The sewer system in the last 20, 30 years has come a long way from what it was, and this is what almost should be the end of anything major in regards.
But at some point you have to figure out how you're going to pay for this.
Correct.
And
Correct.
So the system that was designed in the 1990s, for better or for worse, was a user system.
Right.
Do you still think that will be the same premise versus putting it on property taxpayers? Property taxpayers will still pay sewer and water.
Right.
But instead of being part of their property taxes, this will be a fee system attached to that.
It's hard to express what I'm trying to express, but if you want to drive a new car or a better car, you have to pay for the better car. If we want good water and our waste to be handled properly, not only do we want to do that, but we're mandated to do it. So hopefully the state and or the federal government will come forward with some some financial assistance. We just can't do it as a community.
Yeah. So back in the 90s, I don't want to go back to that. There were some low interest loans. It was not out and out grants, but the city, you have more grant writers today than you did decades ago, to the benefit.
Absolutely, do a fantastic job.
So the goal would be that Christina Selvik and her team will seek grant money for this. But there is a likelihood that you would have to have rate increases at some point to cover these costs.
I really do not. If we were allowed to grab all the money to pay for this, we would be in line with every other community across the country. And the well isn't that deep. So
I just want to make sure if these connected. Is the issue of upgrades to the sewer and water system, let's say this big $100+ million project, and water quality of things coming in from Owasco Lake, are they tied together, or are they separate issues financially?
Financially?
Or just operationally?
They're similar, but they're very dissimilar. What I'm saying is we have to have a somewhat clean water for intake.
But the lake issue is more about cleanliness versus inside the city. It's about transporting liquid.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Last issue I want to ask you about right now is where the city was lucky enough under your term to get $10 million for what was called the Downtown Revitalization Initiative. A number of projects you've talked about here: Auburn Public Theater, the college's Culinary Institute, the Pocket Park at Calitz, the Culinary Institute I mentioned, the new firehouse. All are done, correct? So what's left?
One of the biggest ones it's been on. They're all in the process. In the Health Central building renovation, that's been on hold because of
and that's the old Central High School.
Because of COVID issues, not necessarily with personnel, but just everything backed up in the federal system. So, but everything is moving along, not as quickly. The smaller projects are being completed.
Smaller project would be you have Jesse Klein working on public art.
Yep.
I know the Schweinfurth and the Cougar Museum are still working on their campus issue.
Correct.
Do you see those finishing before you depart, or it sounds like Health Central might be a longer term project.
And Rudolph's downtown was completed also.
Oh, okay.
All right. So a lot of them are.
Which was great to look at during the holiday parade that you walked in, because Dawn Schultz was up in the top balcony waving at everybody.
Yeah.
The television was done.
Her and husband are great. They're great people. They've done a lot for downtown. Going back to your question, everything takes a little bit of time, but let's do it once and do it right. There's a large investment here.
Last question. Do you think that the state will ever do these types of $10 million? I know Moravia was announced this morning that Moravia, Homer, getting 2.5 or something like that. Do you think Auburn will be eligible at a future date for another $10 million?
I certainly hope we are. I think it's made a difference in our community. Not everyone realizes it until they tear it apart and look what's happening. And it's whenever you give anything away, somebody's a winner, somebody didn't win, and there's some agitation there. But I think it's great for the community, and I think it gets the community working as a community, come up with a plan that's sellable.
Mayor, 30 minutes goes quick. Hope you'll come back in the fall.
I will.
For an excellent interview. We want to thank Mayor Michael D. Quill for joining us for City Update. It's been a delight to have him back in the studio. As I've said, he's usually our first guest, followed by our next guest, by the way, in just a moment. Jeff Carzola, the superintendent of schools, is going to be talking about increased school aid for Auburn, as well as a recent report showing a drop in graduation rates, and also some HVAC issues he's having with some elementary schools. We'll be back also on Thursday with 2 back-to-back Beyond the Front Page shows, the first featuring Nick's Ride and the work they do, as well as their upcoming event this Saturday at the Springside Inn. We'll also be joined by Melissa Kenga-Kartner, the head of the Y Camp, and YMCA Membership and Marketing Director Stephanie Bales, to discuss their annual meeting that will celebrate the 100th anniversary of Camp Owasco. In the coming weeks, among our guests will be Legislative Chairman David Gould, Dr. Adam Epler of the Owasco Lake Watershed Management Council, new Cayuga County Chamber of Commerce Director Amy Fuller, Michael Miller, the new head of the Q Economic Development Agency, Father Vasil Kolopanik, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, of St. Peter and St. Peter and Paul Ukrainian Church, to talk about what is going on in the Ukraine and the refugee situation here in Auburn. A film director, we'll have a film director as well as Q Community College President Brian Durant. If you'd like to give us your ideas for future shows or guests or questions you'd like to send, you can do that at cozguytho@aol.com. I'm Guy Cosentino for Q Community College. Thank you for watching, and be safe, and stick around for Superintendent of Schools Jeff Carrizal.